I would literally go Chipotle, Mimi's Cafe, like, hey, can you donate burritos or gift cards that we could use at our event? And most of the time, they'll be like, oh, you just missed the general manager, come back in 2 hours. I go back in 2 hours. So I was like, he left 15 minutes ago, come back tomorrow at this time. So there was a lot of misses and just very time consuming. And it's in person. So you have to go every time to catch them. And I was just telling my team how at the time I really wished there was a website where I could put in, I'm in San Francisco, my event is on September 30th, and I'm looking for food donation or gift card donation, and the website would tell me exactly who to contact.
Welcome to Taste and Tactics, where founders and go-to-market leaders share how they brought their boldest ideas to life. From concept to execution, we cover every step behind these iconic launches. Join me each week for both inspiration and actionable tips. I'm Shriya Nevatia. Let's dive in. Hi, Hannah. Welcome to Taste and Tactics. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, so happy to be here today.
Super excited to talk about your company, TheShareWay, and dive into the very first version of your product that you built. Can you tell us just an overview of the product, what it is, and who's your audience?
Yeah, so the ShareWay is a marketplace connecting companies that want to donate products to nonprofits and schools looking for product donations. So you could kind of view it as a product donations marketplace. Our main audience on the like people getting donations tend to be nonprofits and school clubs. And on the other end, they tend to be anywhere from small businesses to corporations that have product sponsorship or donation programs.
Awesome. Then when do nonprofits usually use this? When are they seeking those in-kind donations? For those who aren't familiar.
Yeah, so the most common use cases on our site, it tends to be any events they have coming up. And the most common is when they have a fundraiser. So this can be anywhere from a gala, a 5K, 10K run, where they're looking for companies to donate food like beer, wine, pizza, which offset event cost, or they're looking for raffle and auction items. So this could be basketball tickets, a wine basket, a dessert. And when they auction raffle these off, these become donations that can go to the nonprofits.
Uh, Okay, so I'd love to dive into kind of the spark of the idea. So one cool thing about this product is you created it at a hackathon. So how did that work? What was that V1? And then what did it turn into after?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was living in the Bay Area, I think just a few years out of college, and signed up for a hackathon with a bunch of my friends, and my team needed an idea. And I just remember this really painful experience I had in high school where I was going door to door to local businesses to get in-kind donations for an event that my high school club was putting on. So I would literally go to Chipotle, Mimi's Cafe, like, hey, can you donate burritos or gift cards that we could use at our event? And most of the time, they'll be like, oh, you just missed the general manager, come back in 2 hours. I go back in 2 hours. So I was like, he left 15 minutes ago, come back tomorrow at this time. So there was a lot of misses and just very time consuming, and it's in person, so you have to go every time to catch them. And I was just telling my team how at the time I really wished there was a website where I could put in, I'm in San Francisco, my event is on September 30th, and I'm looking for food donation or gift card donation, and the website would tell me exactly who to contact. Because if you don't donate to local communities, like I don't want to bother you or contact you. I will only contact you if you want to be contacted and you want to be a part of this. So we essentially built this at the hackathon, got a bunch of signups, and we ended up doing really well at the hackathon. We were one of the top 5 teams and just never stopped working on it since.
Awesome. And how did you decide to continue after? Who on the initial team stayed on? What was kind of what motivated you and pushed you through that time?
Yeah, so it was, I mean, first we did really well. So that was validation that the judges liked it, the audience really liked it. And number two, we got a lot of signups. It was something that I personally struggled. I didn't realize so many other people identified with it. And and then we actually wanted to launch the product post hackathon. So we pushed to do it just because, like, I don't know, we didn't want it to just end. Like, let's see how it actually does. And I think from the very beginning, there were just nonprofits just telling us like how great this is, they love it, like, and it was just a free product. And I think for TheShareWay, it has always been the users telling us, "This is great, we love it. Thank you so much. You saved us so much time." In terms of yeah, so the team was mainly like me and another friend, so the two of us both continue working on it.
Awesome. And I really like that you solved a problem you were familiar with yourself, that personal experience from, and then the user pull kind of pushed you through rather than you building this whole thing and then waiting and having no one interested and trying to kind of like beg them to join. You saw the traction and that kept you going and kept it building up. Would you say that's like accurate description?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It was like maybe not revenue traction, but definitely a lot of enthusiasms and signups. And it took us several more tries to figure out like a revenue model that worked. But I would say if you're working on something like the pricing stuff is not quite there, but people love it, there's something there. Just keep pushing.
Yeah. So I'd love to now go into the playbook of how you kept growing that funnel of nonprofits. So you said that there's like a lot of Google Sheets and other places that they gather. So tell us more about how you found tons of these nonprofit contacts who were looking for in-kind donations.
So, so basically, to get signups, so nonprofits, there are tons of Reddit, Facebook, and many other like Google spreadsheet of resources that are just out there, and you need to find the ones that are the most popular for your city, because everyone is thin on budget, so people are very generous and they tend to want to help each other out. So people would just like create these resource sheets for people. So during our hackathon to get signups, and even afterwards, I was still doing it. I would post TheShareWay. Yeah, so one of them was I was based in San Francisco. There was a Google spreadsheet of free venues for nonprofits, and
Hmm.
people would just contribute and add to it. And then I created a venue directory on the share. Was like, oh hey, there's more here. Go to TheShareWay to see even more options.
Hmm.
So I added to that list. I was a part of a social impact co-working space where a lot of nonprofits worked out of. So I added myself there, and just like other people, places that people have told me about. And that kind of seeded our the very initial batch of users.
How did you make sure that you were leading with value that people appreciated rather than saying like, oh, you're just promoting our business through our resource? It doesn't happen often, but I have seen like when I'm seeking something at a high volume, I get a couple of people saying that.
I think there needs to be a true free aspect to your product. Like, and at that time, the product was for free. Like, we haven't gotten to pricing. We're just trying to get signups and get interest. So if they go to that site and you provide value for them upfront, I think that that makes it okay. Versus like you land on the site and then you have to pay right away to even see anything. Then I feel like that's disingenuous. So having a free element.
How did you, if other people were figuring out those venue sources, how did you confirm that those venues were free? Like, how did you find more than that resource already had?
We like Googled, I asked people and just compiled my own database, a director like spreadsheet of things. And you'll find that many nonprofits have their own spreadsheet of like free resources, free venue, who donates what, and this spreadsheet tends to be passed down year to year. Like when I was doing my high school donor solicitation, it was literally a spreadsheet that's been used for the past 5 years, and it has the like who to contact, and people just go back to the same donor and contact them. So I essentially just did research and compiled them myself.
Awesome. And then I know another thing that you did to build trust with nonprofits was consult for them. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I think I've always been a very user-driven person, and I really wanted to be in the shoes of user, and also because the high school experience was years ago, right?
Hmm.
So it's been a while since I procured donations for nonprofits. So I was like, okay, what if I sell myself as a consultant? You can hire me to get donations for your conferences. So I ended up doing this for a Teach for America conference and like a Korea American student conference. And then I just charged them a percentage of the product donate. And then part of it was like validating, like, will people pay for a percentage of product donated?
Hmm.
And they did. So because that's what I charged them. So and part of it through this experience, I was trying out different tactics I had, and it allowed me to write blog articles of like tips, success, like how to procure items. For example, like I think I was like very seriously tracking when people said yes,
Hmm.
and follow ups really helps. I think 45% of my yeses came from the second or third follow up. So they
Hmm.
would not respond and I would follow up. So doing it myself gave me the knowledge to share more with nonprofits on how to crack like donation procurement. Yeah, so I did that, validated a couple things, and I'm sharing my findings. And then, I mean, obviously didn't keep on doing it because it's not scalable. So use that knowledge to build a tech product.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're using some of the software data tracking techniques that maybe nonprofits weren't already using, like even giving them that stat that 45% closed on the second or third follow up. I wonder, did you find a lot of customers were like, oh, I didn't even think of tracking it that?
Yeah, most people aren't. I mean, I think a lot of nonprofits, they're not super, what's the word, systematic about how they do it. It might just be like, I see this donor, I'll just like email them,
Hmm.
versus like a spreadsheet. There's like a very strict process that they go through. Yeah.
Awesome. And then let's talk about the other side of it, the businesses that were giving the in kind donation. So, how'd you find them? Did you do in person or virtual? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So one of the first things I did after the hackathon was I try to onboard. So this is a marketplace, the nonprofits on one side and the business on the other. So the nonprofits, we had tons of signups, right? So I was like, okay, we need to validate the business side. So I remember just biking all across San Francisco to local restaurants, coffee shops, businesses, asking them like, would they like to be a part of the ShareWay? Would they like to use the ShareWay to streamline their donation request and just make their life easier and save time? And I got a lot of no's. And the few yeses that I got, one of them was actually a really big one. It was Philz Coffee,
Mm.
signing them on to. So what Philz Coffee ended up doing is they used our their so to apply for a coffee donation from Philz Coffee, you had to fill out an application, and that form was hosted on our site. So they on their website they linked to that form, and that drove a lot of traffic to our site because people knew that Phil's donated and were contacting them, and then ended up finding out about the ShareWay where they could find even more donors. So that was a really big win for us on the business side.
For people who aren't in San Francisco, like tell us more about Phil's. It's such a institution. Yeah, why do you think that was like the key place that nonprofits were maybe already turning to? A lot of them were like thinking of it.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. In some cities, they're just like that one coffee shop that's local that everyone loves to go to. They haven't quite expanded nationally, but it's just a local favorite. So Phil's is kind of like that in San Francisco. Everyone knows about it, and people love it. And they now probably have like I don't know, 30, 40, 50 stores within San Francisco, and they've expanded since. They're in like all across California now. So it's a well-known local brand. Yeah.
How did you get other businesses or like walk me through? You'd walk in, sound like in high school, you'd try and talk to the general manager. And would you have to convince them of the value of working with nonprofits and giving products away for free? How did it work?
Yeah, so this was a little bit different because in high school it was, hey, we have this event coming up. Would you be interested in donating burritos? And usually the businesses have heard this before; they know what it is. You usually just need to be like early enough. They still have a budget, and they'll do it. What I was doing was a little bit different. I was trying to sign them up to a SaaS tool. So what I would typically ask is like, hey, I'm curious if you get a lot of donation requests that it's difficult to manage. Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, not really." I'll be like, "Are you looking for to give more to the community? If so, I could help you like increase your volume." So if it's like no, no, and no, then I don't like pitch so hard like this is not the right fit. And if they do say they struggle with like managing donation requests, and that was one of the things that stuck with Phil's because they were getting inundated now. Like people just email them or they walk into the store. There was like no process yet, so we really caught them at the right time. So just walk in and just start with like a problem they might identify with. And if they don't identify, then that's a no, that's not the right segment or the right customer. And that's okay. You're not supposed to get yeses every time. And if they say yes, then you just continue the conversation. The cold walking was a really good way to kind of understand who is your segment really quickly, because very soon I realized restaurants are so busy. They they don't have they typically don't make that much. Even if people ask, they just can't, because running a restaurant, you're already overwhelmed. So I knew that that was not a good area to go down in. And then when you're too small, when you're like mom and pop, they're just trying to survive, right? Like trying to like break even and whatnot. So they're also not they're usually just like, I just got the sense that this wasn't a priority. They have a lot more other things to worry about. That like life and death to like keeping the business open. Versus I feel like if I had started with cold email, because cold email people just don't respond, and you don't know why. Versus walk-in, it's intimidating, but you get the data points much faster.
Yeah, they say like, sorry, we can't afford to, or it's not a huge priority for us, or we haven't heard many people ask. And so then you kind of triage and like know what the buckets of responses are, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And then so restaurants weren't a great segment, but did you find a particular segment that was the most interested? Like you said, venues. Yeah, was there something that was like, oh, I'm having a higher percentage of yeses for this?
I think it was, well, that learning came over several months. I didn't like, I biked for like 2 or 3 weeks. I didn't like keep on doing that strategy. I also tried, like going to like Whole Foods, like I would just take pictures of different like snack or beverage brands, and I would look them up, email them, because that's also another channel, right? They don't have a store, but they distribute all all across like the U.S. or like regionally. And then I also went to a big food and beverage expo called Expo West, where a lot of new brands were there. That was actually really nice, because that was just like booth after booth. So it's kind of like in person, you could just ask them a lot of questions up front. And what I did find was those type of snack beverage and snacks company who do sampling, they don't, because when you're a new brand, food and beverage brand, unless people have tried your product, they're not really going to buy it from Whole Foods.
Yeah.
So sampling is part of their marketing strategy. So that ended up being a good segment. And I realized most people with a storefront, like that's not like chain or big enough, they're usually not a good fit, because they're just trying to figure out their operations for that one store. But when you're big enough, like a Philz, you now start to have like a community person who's in charge of doing this. So those were some of the learnings. Yeah.
Yeah, I also find as a customer, like I love trying new mocktail brands and snack brands. They can't ship you D2C one item. They have to ship you like a 12 item variety pack. And if I haven't tasted it, that's a huge risk that I'm stuck with 11 things I don't like. And so, yeah, I see that those like have built into their business model. We're going to give away this amount free to in-person events, which totally makes sense. And then I'm sure that they say yes more readily if it's a nonprofit versus like a for-profit or a social event. I don't know. You weren't necessarily asking for both. Yeah.
On the reason that they're donating, if it's pure marketing, I think it's basically your demographic and your demand type. It's a good alignment. If you're doing it for philanthropy, so kind of like Philz Coffee, they will have a criteria. They don't donate to for profits.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it's exclusively that, and so that's how you got more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'd love to go into some of your pivots. So you've pivoted a couple of times between like directory and marketplace. So how did you decide each of those? What worked and didn't work in each one?
Yeah. So we at the hackathon, the original idea was to build a marketplace for product donations, like all around SF, trying to onboard businesses, and just realize the sales cycle to onboard a business to this tool was way too long. Because when it's a SaaS tool to help you manage your donation requests, it's very low on the priority list. You care about things that are revenue generating. This is like giving stuff away, right? Like, do they really care about optimizing it? Yes, but like it's not a huge deal if they don't right away. And at the time, we're just getting started, right? So it's not like we had a ton of volume on the nonprofits. We didn't have like 100,000 nonprofits using us where we could give them insights about who they are, how to do giving more efficiently or better. So we actually, at some point, we decided like it's taking too long to onboard the businesses. Like it would be like 6+ months, right? So there's no way we could build a marketplace supply side of donors quick enough to support the nonprofits. So what we decided was how do we just build a really, really great product for nonprofits who want to find in-kind donations? So forget this marketplace concept. How do we just build the best product there is to help nonprofits find in-kind donations? And we realized a lot of people were referencing the same spreadsheet year to year, and they don't know all the people out there who donated. So what we did was we decided, like, what if we just build a really good directory? So like imagine instead of you as a nonprofit building your own spreadsheet, every nonprofit in the US building their own spreadsheet of in-kind donors, what if we build a national product donors directory? People have done this for grants. When you look for grants as a nonprofit, there are tons of tools out there to help you find grants, but no one has built up a directory for product donors. So we set out to build the first national product donors directory. So we just started with like, I think the first version was probably 200 companies that donated in San Francisco. We launched, and I was the person cataloging them. I did the very first version of and we pushed that out, and a lot of nonprofits in San Francisco loved it and told us, wow, I never knew Buy Right donated. I never knew this other company donated. I didn't know I could hit them up. So it provided a lot of value. And then we just linked them to the application process for each of the donors.
How did you build up a ton of them? Would you go to a nonprofit and say like, hey, do you have a list of everyone who said yes and past things? Or did you just like crawl a ton of websites looking for a specific link?
Yeah, we would ask people to share their, especially if they feel comfortable that like we're looking for more companies that donate in San Francisco. We also we Googled, we did research on our own. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then now you have some monetization that you've been rolling out. So tell us more about that, how you decided to set that up.
So essentially we shifted to just building a directory for nonprofits. And then it was free for a bit. And then we're like, okay, how do we start to charge this? There's a lot of enthusiasm. People love it. We knew the use case was people usually use our site when they have an event coming up. Mm-hmm. So, and most nonprofits have one big fundraiser a year. So they'll use it for the 3 months leading up to the event. So usually you have to start soliciting 3 to 4 months before the events and to ask for sponsors. So we were like, okay, the billing model that works for this like pattern is buying passes. So you could buy like a 1 month or 3 month pass. We didn't do like monthly or annual subscription because we just like didn't think people needed year round. Mm-hmm. 1 month is actually too short because you need 3 months to really be successful. So the first model we launched was these like passes that people could buy. Mm-hmm. I think people were really confused about it because I mean, even back then, people were used to monthly or annual subscription, and this is a new pricing model that they're unfamiliar with. So there was a lot of confusion, and we were also doing ourselves a disservice because the pass will end and they'll forget to subscribe again. Yeah. Versus subscription, you keep making money until they cancel. So we started with that and eventually changed to a subscription model and saw like much higher revenue retention from that. Yeah, so that was one thing we tried.
And then when you, for example, were during the consulting, when you were charging a percentage of the value of those donations, I think you said you tried that as a business model in general too. Like what worked, what didn't work?
We considered it, but we realized because we're building a directory, the businesses, they're not users on our site. So the value of how much product donations did you get, it has to be user reported. Like I got $200 or I got $300.
Yeah.
And that was not very reliable, especially if you're going to charge a percentage. People will just not report it.
Of course.
So we realized like And we thought about that because all the other platforms are doing that, right? All the like classy, all the giving platforms, you do a percentage of the donation transacted, but this was we couldn't do that because it's the product is transacted. It doesn't happen on our site, like the physical exchange is offline.
I'm curious, because they're otherwise getting these donations for free, what percentages do other people charge? What do you charge during consulting? Like, what's a standard?
I don't know if anyone else was doing it. I just like came up with this business on my own. Okay, I don't quote me on this. It's been a while, but I feel like maybe I did 10 or 15%.
Yeah, makes sense. Like, if they're getting maybe like three extra things that they otherwise wouldn't, like catering in kind, obviously it would still be way more cost effective to pay 15% of it versus the whole thing.
Totally, totally,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, I'd love to talk about some of the outcomes of building this, especially looking back from this V1 to where you are today. So, have you seen nonprofits like change their whole process, or is there still a huge market size who's doing it the old way?
I think there's still a pretty big market size because I mean I present at webinars, and when I talk to people, my story of how I've looked for donations still resonates with a lot of people. So I think a lot of people are still referencing old spreadsheets, cold calling, walking in. I think it's still very, very common. I mean, ShareWay has 160,000 users now, so we are becoming a more and more common tool. Maybe in a couple more years, this will be like, I don't know, 50% of the nonprofits use this.
Really exciting. And like, how are you expanding? Do you have tons of traction in the Bay Area first? Did you expand to other cities or internationally? Or yeah, tell me more.
Yeah. So because we were building the first product donations directory, we had to be very city specific, right? Because if you're adding donors all across the US, but there's no critical mass in Boston, like if you just have 5 donors, it's not valuable to nonprofits in that city. And donors are very geographic specific, right? Because sometimes they don't have a footprint in another state, right? So they literally can't ship their product to you. So
Mm,
started in San Francisco, and then we did LA and New York. And then, so we just focused on creating a really great directory for those cities first. And then at some point, we had the budget to hire someone to help us source and catalog donors. So from there, we then went national. And then today we're still cataloging. Like we're barely scratching the surface. So every week we add 40 new donors to our.
awesome. Yeah. And then I think you also said that you launched a grant directory, and I know there's other software companies that help with grant writing, grant finding, but do you think that's kind of the next big like product segment or feature that you want to get into?
Yeah, so we launched grants last year because a lot of our users are like, oh, this is great. Where else can I find grants? So it's really from our users asking for it. So last year we launched a grants directory. People are loving it. And now I think the overall vision of, so last year we launched grants. This year, the big new direction is start to go from directory back to marketplace. So this year we are spending a lot of time on building a brand product to bring on like the new food and beverage brands, the Philz of the world, to use us to intake their donation requests. I've been doing the sales for that, and it's been much, much easier because we have so much volume.
Yeah.
So the brands are interested. They're like, if I'm on here, I get visibility with like 10,000 nonprofits every single month.
Hmm.
Um, so the overall vision for the ShareWay is a place nonprofits can go to find corporate grants or donations. So really focus on the business to nonprofit, the donations that happen between corporations and nonprofits, whether that's a product or that's a grant that a company is giving. So starting out our brand product, we're enabling companies to intake product donation requests from our site. But in the future, they can also manage their grants program on via our tools too. So this is going to become the best place to go to if you want to build partnerships and get donations and grants from corporations.
Awesome. And so basically, it's not just the directory or marketplace. There's also some like back-end tools on the kind of B2B side of both sides. They can manage everything, right?
Yeah, that's the vision. These type of marketplaces, as a company, you'll want to be on the ShareWay, but you also have your own source of traffic, right? Like if you a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you could get donation requests on our site that we would list you as a grant, but you also have your own people are going to your own website. So how do we give you a tool where you could be a part of the ShareWay, but also manage your own flow, and it all comes into one system versus you have like two different systems to manage.
Yeah, yeah. Great. So thank you so much for diving into all of the tactical details. I think that that'll be super helpful for people starting a similar startup or business. And that's kind of my goal with this. I love to get the nitty-gritty of those so that people who are trying to figure out how to get something off the ground, they think of and learn from what other people are doing for sales and marketing. My last question for you, kind of aligned with our name, is what do you think good taste is when it comes to a product or brand? Like, how do you define taste?
Yeah, I think the simpler the product experience, the better. Like people should not have to read to understand what to do on your site. So being a very intuitive product. And the example I like to give is, so for example, there are two approaches, right? So basically as a directory of donors, when you land on our site to find donors, it's like a listing of donors. And we're very picture driven because it's product, right? So we like to, like, if they're a coffee donor, we like to put a photo of their coffee as their profile photo. When you land on a directory of thousands of donors and you just land there and there are a bunch of filters, pictures, there's like, you save it, you view their profile, very confusing, right? And the way we like to guide our users is like, kind of like when you're on an e-commerce site, you could create a closet or whatever.
Yeah.
You could just stuff you're interested into it. So we have the concept of you create your event and fundraiser, and that has all of your settings, right? Geographic filters, causes, can you do pickup? And then from there, we then narrow down the list of donors. So instead of just dropping them in there and do a bunch of tooltips, like create an event per first, and then do this, and then do this, what we found to be helpful is being very targeted. So not even showing the donor list until they create an event. So a very step-by-step process. Like, this is the thing you got to do first before you want to see this exciting donor list. So by doing that, we don't have to force people to read what are the things they got to do. It's just in the app, like, this is the thing you need to do first.
That makes a lot of sense. It's so overwhelming to just see a gigantic directory. I make that mistake all the time in e-commerce. I say view all, and then I overwhelm myself. But really, for this event, if they, for example, aren't going to serve alcohol, you don't want them to have to see that. And like, you'll filter it out so that it's not cluttering up the things they actually need to sort through.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last thing is, how can we help you, especially if any listeners are on either side of the marketplace for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, number one, if you know any nonprofits or school clubs that could find this helpful, share it with them. If they just Google the ShareWay or go to theshareway.com, we should be right there. And if there are any businesses that are interested in donating to nonprofits because it's like their philanthropic goals, or they want to reach a particular audience, we love to talk to them too. So there are tons of like young professional events hosted by nonprofits around. So if you're like a beverage brand and you want to reach like female founders in San Francisco, we have like tons of events that fit that demographic. So if you're doing product sponsorships for marketing, we love to talk to you too.
Awesome. All right, cool. We'll include all of those links in the show notes. And Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that all the listeners learned a lot from all of these details. So thanks again.
Of course, so happy to be here. And I really enjoy sharing all the learnings I've had. And feel free to reach out anytime for any questions.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks again to Hannah for joining us. The top 3 things that I learned from this episode were, first, to hack existing resources where your customer is living. She used these Google Sheets and Facebook groups where nonprofit leaders were already looking for big databases of places that they could seek in-kind donations. And she added information to that, added TheShareWay, gave a lot of resources for free. She wasn't asking for things, and she wasn't like begging people to say, sign up for my product, sign up for my product. It always feels like an ad, and people really aren't interested in hearing that and being pitched to. Second, don't be afraid to try and sell to customers in person, even if you're going to get a lot of rejections, because you learn more about what their objection reasons are, and then you can categorize those into buckets and say, hey, here's 4 to 5 common reasons and patterns that we're seeing, and it can also help you refine your audience. For example, when she said that restaurants that are by small and mom and pops, they just can't afford to do in-kind donations, because they weren't a good target audience to be listed on her site. And finally, if you have one really well-known power customer like Philz for TheShareWay, double down on that partnership. Rather than just saying like, we're working with Philz or having it on the site, she actually had the form for nonprofits to request in-kind donations on the TheShareWay website, and thus find more nonprofits who didn't know about them but knew about Philz, and direct them back to the TheShareWay, which was a huge game changer for their customer acquisition. Definitely recommend doing something like that if you can, to make that partnership with your top customer even stronger over time. Thanks again to Hannah. Taste and Tactics is available on every major podcast platform and at Taste and Tactics on LinkedIn, X, TikTok, and Instagram. Thank you to our producer, Simran Honda. See you next week.